What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to episode 8 of the show with no name, which is not really, it's kind of a inaccurate name because the name is the show with no name, so it does have a name. Mm-hmm. We might have to, we've been lying for 8 episodes now, and now I'm worried about it. Paul probably has a problem with us lying as we read through Romans. Man.
He's probably got his arms crossed.
Yeah, he's very upset with us. With me, as always, is Pastor Leo. Hello, Pastor Leo.
¿Cómo está, everyone?
We are wrapping up the third to last book of Romans. Mm-hmm. We're almost done.
We are almost done.
Soonish, we'll announce where we're going next. Maybe not. Maybe we'll save it to the last episode of Romans. I don't know.
Or maybe we'll just surprise you and then.
Yeah, we'll get to the first episode of whatever book we're in next. We'll be like, you haven't read? For shame. Here's everything the book you should have read says about you not reading the Bible. That's a really good idea, Leo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The window for requests is closed, however.
Unfortunately, sadly.
So if you're one of the many who requested judges, congrats, you got that in. Doesn't mean we're doing it, but we read your comments, I promise you.
We're going to consider it.
And no, Leo, that wasn't just like 10 burner accounts that I made to go type in judges. Please do 4 episodes on Ehud. We will. I'll need you to take it if that's where we go next or ever.
Right.
I'm gonna need like a deep dive on that one.
Oh,
like 5 episodes just on how fat that king was. Like we'll bring in scientific experts from around the country.
Right.
Like how fat would he have had to be for that sword to disappear inside of him? How bad must he have smelled for them to not realize what happened? It would be a great episode.
It's gonna be great.
There's less of that type of nonsense in Romans. Is that fair to say?
Well, sort of.
There's, it has its own. Oh, there's a fly in here. I'm going to be very distracted this episode.
Boy, I can see it
just
too.
Watching that fly go around. Oh, boy.
When we suddenly stop talking and then...
If you're watching the video podcast and Leo just starts to swing wildly in front of his face, now you'll know why. Have you ever used one of those bug assault guns?
I want to.
I do too.
I mean...
Pastor Mark, if you're listening, this is why I said New Hope needs to buy me one of those. Because right now I could just pull it out from under the table and fire some salt at that guy.
Right.
And we'd be fine. We could move on with our lives.
I mean, we'll just whip one of those bad guys out and then just point it at the wall. And
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
When we first started New Hope here, I guess it was technically before we started New Hope here, but we were starting to focus on that. Like, okay, we're going to make the online campus like an actual campus. So Michael and I, with Pastor Mike, who was then our lead pastor, went to Washington, D.C. area and learned from a really amazing church down there. And they... So we were learning all the technical stuff and all the administrative stuff. And it was like drinking from a fire hose for a couple of days. But they were filming their pastor teaching, and there were like flies flying around, and they had someone bring over a bug assault gun, and I'm like, that should have been the first. Before we even bought a camera, we should have bought the bug assault gun. I'll regret it forever. They seem so fun. If I'm being honest, they just seem so fun. And part of me wants to just like kick Leo's office door open and come in and just pop him with some salt. It's amazing.
I want to try it.
If you haven't seen them, it's like they fire salt.
Yeah.
And so it's like a shotgun for flies. It's amazing.
It's like pressurized air.
Yeah.
And then salt particles.
Amazing.
Oh boy.
It's got to hurt a little bit, right? Maybe not.
Yeah.
They're so small.
Yeah.
Again, we need to find out. Like, how would we know?
Right.
Ehud would know.
He got hit.
I'm going to keep bringing him up.
By a bug assault.
Even if we pick a different book, can we just do like a one-off episode just on that portion of Judges?
Like in between the Romans.
Yeah,
and the
like
new
before
book.
we jump into Nehemiah or wherever we go next. I feel like we need a one-off episode just on that. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, you guys heard it here.
We'll do a forensic analysis.
don't know what your degree is in, but mine is not in that. So I have watched some, Law and Order in my day, Criminal Minds. So I'm basically an expert. On everything.
There we go. So see?
Yeah, so we'll be good to go. We'll be good to go.
Forensic analysis of Ehud.
Well, for the 4 of you that have not turned off the podcast, we're going to jump into
What
Romans.
are you doing?
Yeah, come on, guys. No, we're going to jump into Romans 14. There's no food this week.
No food this week.
Just as I stare at you disappointingly.
Balut.
But okay, never mind.
Okay,
never mind. I'm happy there's no food.
There we go.
Do you just always have some in your pocket just in case I agree to eat it? Like, like here's
fermenting in one of my pockets.
Gross. I think we need. I need to try. What was the avocado thing you force fed me?
Oh, the ice candy.
Yeah. At some point, I need to try a different flavor of ice candy.
Ooh, Andy. There we go.
It doesn't need to be on the podcast. You can shower me with these gifts anytime you want, Leo. Because again, I despise avocado, and I didn't despise that. So the flavors that I actually like must be unbelievable. So one of these days we're gonna have to make that happen. But today is not that
flavored ice candy. No,
gross. All right. So Romans 14, verses 13 through 23. So that's the rest of Romans 14. If you missed last week's episode, I encourage you to go listen to that. And then if you haven't read yet, similarly encourage you to just quickly pause us. You can slowly pause us too. That's up to you. You don't have to slap your phone really hard, but pause us and read those 11 verses. Won't take you very long, that you are not hearing them for the first time, because we don't stop and read them. But you do give a summary on them, Leo. So would you start us off with your summary?
Okay, so for this one, Paul emphasizes the fact that our relationship with other Christians are not as masters and servants. We talked about that last week too. We're not masters and servants. We are brothers and sisters in Christ. So Paul talked about this before, the word Philadelphia, not the city.
Ironically
the
named
Greek
city.
word, I know, right? That's episode 4 of the show with no name. If you want to listen to us talk about this city, but Philadelphia means brotherly love.
Yeah.
If we love one another, we will seek to edify and build one another up. So to support this, Paul gives, again, 4 points.
Yeah, you had 4 points last week from Paul.
So 4 points again this week.
You think that was his number? Like on his high school soccer team, Paul wore number 4.
Lucky number 4, it says in his yearbook.
It's etched in stone.
Right.
They had paper then. I am exaggerating.
So it's 4 points to help us understand why it's a good thing to do so.
So in chapter 12, we had to love everybody,
Yeah.
both people in and out of the church. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
And then in 13, things got even easier, and we learned that we have to submit to the government. Everyone's favorite episode of the show with no name. And then last week, we had to stop judging and arguing about the non-essentials and focus on following Jesus and seeking the good for everybody else.
Right.
When do we just get an easy chapter? when do we just get, can we just, hey, breathe today? Paul, I got you, dude. Thanks, man.
Breathe today. Just rest. You're good to go. And then chapter 15.
Yeah, there should have been a 14.5. But yeah, these are some big asks, one might say.
True. That is true. And Paul doesn't just leave it like that. Yeah. He does give us 4 reasons.
Yeah, I heard your 4 reasons already. Yeah. Let's start with the one, I guess, if he's going to prove to me that this is important.
Okay.
We've got a therefore to start these verses. We teased that last week, but anytime there's a therefore, it's because of all this other stuff I just said.
Right.
Now this new stuff.
Especially the last one. The last episode where we talked about judging one another and why that's not a good thing. Therefore,
all builds up to this.
Right.
Yep.
So verses 13 to 15, the first reason is we Christians affect one another. So possible ways how we do that, we can cause others to stumble by by bickering and infighting and all that, we can cause others to stumble, or we can cause them to grieve because of everything that's going on. We should be loving one another, but we're not, so others are grieving. Or we can destroy them or lead them off the path of righteousness. So Paul dealt with a similar problem in 1 Corinthians chapter 8 to 9. Again, you can pause this and read that. But the question that was asked there was, should Christians eat meat that has been offered to idols in heathen temples? There, Paul said, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1. So a Christian who has great spiritual knowledge is good. It's good. It's not bad. It's good. But if he does not practice love, he will only hurt and confuse those who are spiritually weak and maybe even cause them to stumble. So knowledge must be balanced by love.
Yeah, you made a lot of noises last week because it was a pet peeves of yours. This has become one of mine in my older age now, where I'm gonna read it quick because Paul says it better than I can. But
really,
yeah, right. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then for that person it is unclean. Again, we're talking about the non-essentials. These aren't the like Jesus is the only way to heaven. I don't regard him as that, so it's fine. Like no, we're talking about the non-essentials.
More of that. Go back to the last episode.
Yeah. But so I'm just gonna take alcohol. Okay. Yeah. So like someone thinks alcohol is like I can't drink, like I don't drink alcohol. I feel very convicted personally. I shouldn't drink alcohol. And so for me, it definitely would be wrong for me to go drink alcohol because I feel personally convicted. I have my best friends in the world that are unbelievable followers of Christ. They have an amazing relationship with the Lord, and they don't have that same exact view of alcohol. And then you get to verse 15, and it's, if your brother or sister is distressed because of what you eat, you are no longer acting in love. And like I have friends who have gone both routes with me before. And to clarify, I've done this with other things where I've been the person not doing it right. But I have friends who they won't drink when they're around me because they don't even want me to have to think about like okay, I know David doesn't drink and that's it's a spiritual reason for him, so I'm not going to drink when I'm around him.
Right.
And then I have other friends who will try to get me to have a beer with them because they're like, there's nothing wrong with it. The Bible, and for the most part, it's it's in fun and jest and everything. But sometimes it goes way beyond that. Now I haven't experienced that a ton, especially with my close friends. But if the thing that I'm doing isn't wrong, but it's you talked about it earlier, it's causing someone else to stumble because for them it is wrong, or it's making their relationship with Christ more difficult. Just stop doing it.
Yeah, just
don't
stop.
do it around them. Like like again, like the alcohol thing, right? There's people.
You can do it some other time.
There's people in your life that maybe you shouldn't drink around, so don't drink around them. And similarly for me, like I don't make a big deal about alcohol around people who are okay with it because I'm like, this is not an issue that I can be like, here are the 5 verses that prove that you should never have a sip of alcohol, therefore you should. So I'm never going to go up to, like, hey, Leo, it's nice to meet you at this party for the first time. I heard you're a Christian. Why are you drinking, you sinner? Like, that doesn't make sense. That would be me causing you to stumble because I'm putting my convictions about non-essentials upon you. And that's so much of what Paul is talking about right here. And then, your first question last week, Leo, when you asked us, like, what are we looking like to those outside the church?
Yeah. When
we just fight constantly and bicker and quarrel and whatever old person word you can think of for fighting, like amongst ourselves. And like, imagine being a person who's on the outside looking in at the church. And you're like, why would I want to be a part of that?
Right.
Like they're fighting about a glass of wine. They're fighting about like a day of the week. Like, why in the world would I get involved with that? Like, sure, I might even be someone who's kind of curious about spiritual things and like I know something's missing, but the thing that's missing is definitely not that because my word, I have enough fighting and quarreling and bickering in my own life.
If this is what I'm missing, I'd rather miss it.
Yes, I'm very good missing that. Right. That is great. Yeah.
Like, again, it's just, shake my head. SMH.
Stop fighting with each other.
Stop it. Just stop it.
But we need, like, and that's why he emphasizes love
Yeah.
so much right now.
Right.
And
It's like this. It's like a mother that knows that the boogeyman is not real.
well, that's just not true.
The boogeyman. Like, there's one under the table and that.
Yeah,
that's
that's
not.
actually true.
So a mother who knows that the boogeyman is not real, she will never drive the fear out of her child by arguing with her. It's like, come on,
Get
are
in a
you
big
kidding me?
fight with
Like-
your 3-year-old.
Show me one proof that the boogeyman is real. Like that kind of thing. No, it's that's just crazy.
That's a fun
right?
mental picture. I
mean,
like that.
So when the mom sits at the bedside, here's the thing: when you sit at the bedside, you talk lovingly to your child, and you assure him that he's safe, and he slowly learns to sleep without fear. That's when you start driving the fear out of the child. So knowledge plus love, in the same way, helps a spiritually weak person to grow strong, not arguments and not bickering, right? So in the same way, Paul is saying that with regard to those who observe dietary laws or special days and whatnot, and all of the things that they're talking about, how something affects a person is what determines its quality to that person. One man may be able to read certain books, eat certain foods, watch certain shows or movies, or listen to certain kinds of music and not be bothered by them, while another person might be tempted to sin. So the issue is not how does it affect me, and we talked about that just now. The question is actually, if I do this, how will it affect my brother or my sister or my friend or my mom or my dad? Right? So if it will make them stumble or even encourage them to sin, is it really worth it?
I think this point might be the hardest of these 4 points for our specific culture in America, and even more so maybe in North Dakota.
The do-you culture?
My freedoms are the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't take away my freedom. Like I can do whatever I want because it's me and it's my, and that's our focus. And even like not on such a hyper extreme level of it. So like so much of American culture is I get to make decisions for myself, and and then the more people try to tell me what I can and cannot do, the more an American wants to do the opposite.
America is built on freedom.
Even if that was that was already a thing I wasn't going to do, but now that you're telling me I can't do it, I kind of want to do it now.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not unique exclusively to America, but it's definitely ingrained in our culture, and it's never a thought of like, what is this doing to my neighbor? What is this doing to my brother? This is like, I have the freedom to do it, and therefore I can do it because I only have to worry about me. And what Paul is telling us is the exact opposite. If we really, really love one another, we're gonna be thinking about how all these things we're doing affect other people. So it doesn't mean the thing you're doing is sinful, right? Again, these are the non-essentials where you and the Holy Spirit are gonna figure out where you land on these things. But if the side you land on that thing is causing your brother to stumble, then you're not doing it right.
That's
just
right.
Like you're still wrong. You are still sinning, even though the specific act might not be your sin, but your lack of love for other people is doing that. I think that's one. It's just harder for us because we do live in a society where it's like how does me watching this TV show affect you in any way? Like you just do your own thing and don't worry about me. How does me drinking or eating these foods or all the million things we talked about? And that's a really important one for us to remember. Is that is that we affect one another. We as Christians we affect other Christians.
Like even as
is it
human
gonna be
beings,
for good or
we
bad?
affect other human beings.
So are we going to do it for good or for bad?
That's right.
Second reason.
All right, second reason is we Christians must have priorities. This is verses 16 to 18. There are churches that get divided over really insignificant matters compared to the vital things of the Christian faith. We talked about this last week too. You want to go back to it? Go back to it. That's a fun one. Matters like
Is it?
how it matters like how cold or how hot the church is.
Pastor Mark and I are regularly divided on that one.
Like the office is. Like how cold or how hot it is. Like how comfortable the seats are. How many songs they sing. What kind of songs they sing. Are the baptisms done by sprinkling? Are they done by immersion? Are they done by injection? I have no
Injection. What kind of weird
We will
churches
inject
have
you with
been
holy
to?
water, and therefore you are baptized.
I don't think that's a thing. I'm choosing to believe that's not a thing.
So do they use musical
word.
instruments? Does the pastor wear a suit?
Ooh.
And all of
My
these
dad
things.
doesn't, so never go to his church.
Oh boy!
How
there we
dare he
go.
not wear a suit?
Me too.
Neither do you.
Yeah.
I have seen you in a suit at least.
You have seen me in a suit. That's
on
right.
like a special occasion.
Mhm.
I don't
Special
kn-
occasions
I
sometimes,
don't
but
think
not
I've
all
ever
the
seen
time.
Pastor Mark in a suit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Send in your angry letters
The
to
horror.
info@newhopewilson.com.
Horror. So here's Paul's answer. The kingdom of God is not meat and drink. That's Romans 14:17.
Good one.
Food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. That's 1 Corinthians 8, verse 8. In other words, don't focus on the externals, focus on the eternals. Focus on righteousness. Focus on peace. Focus on joy. And all the other fruits of the Spirit. Focus on living a godly life instead of fighting with each other over minor matters. Focus on love.
Imagine
period.
how frustrating it must have been for Paul. Just like everywhere he goes. And like at this point in time, right? Especially, not even especially, because whether it was a Roman convert who had, probably been connected to like Roman religion up to that point, or a Jewish convert who had been connected to the Jewish religion of the last 500 years, which was rules on top of rules on top of rules.
Yeah. 613.
Like nobody had like a preconceived notion of like just stop with the unimportant stuff, because the unimportant stuff had been the only stuff for so long,
right?
And he's just like, can you guys just listen? Like, I've written so many letters and I talk about it in so many of them. And obviously I'm sure Jesus was frustrated too, but he was perfect, so he, I can't come up with a scenario in my brain of him losing his temper unacceptably. I like to imagine Paul just sitting in prison, and like Timothy comes to tell him about some other church that's doing terrible stuff, and he just chucks something against the wall.
Right.
Like,
Come that on. Meme with the Enterprise guy, Captain Picard, with his head down.
Oh yeah. That was more Jesus's calm response. Right. I like to think of Paul just got like his plate of food from the prison guard, and he just fires it at the bars.
Right.
Come on. Then Timothy's like, good thing I snuck you in some bread. This is what happens in my brain when I read the Bible. This is why it's hard for me sometimes.
But it's just crazy.
Yeah, but the irony being, it's 2,000 years later, and
we're still doing it.
We're still doing it.
We're still at it.
The nice thing is we have way more people that are like consistently trying to teach it correctly and trying to live it out correctly. But even so, it's just not our natural inclination, and so
that's right.
We just get hung up on it. What's the third reason we've got here, Pastor Leo?
Third reason we have is we Christians must help each other grow.
Which you can do on the Grow podcast weekdays, every Monday, 6 a.m.
And the show with no name.
And the show with no name, which you're currently listening to. So I'm also going to promo that. But sorry. Anytime you say the word grow, I'm legally obligated to start talking about the Grow podcast.
It's in his contract.
It's in my contract.
So verses 19 to 21 is where you will find it. We all need to grow. So the strong
on the Grow podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
So the strong believer needs to grow in love. The weak believer needs to grow in knowledge. So we all need to grow. Here's the thing. Here's a little story. When Alondra and Gabriel, our kids,
Not our kids.
No,
We
me
didn't
and
like
Andy.
adopt. We're not like a weird sitcom on CBS where like a pastor and a basketball coach adopted two kids together. This would be you and your wife.
So yeah, me and Andy. When Alondra and Gabriel were still little, we needed to make a change in the house. So no scissors on the chair, no sharp stuff.
May I ask a question? Did you regularly leave scissors on the chair before you had kids? Was this a normal thing in the Monteroyo household?
You know that Game of Thrones kind of throne where it's just
The swords. That was basically your whole house.
That's my chair. That's Dad's chair. So when Alondra and Gabriel were little, we did those kinds of things. No scissors on the chair, nothing dangerous within reach on the table. But as they grew older, we started relaxing the rules. So we are dealing with Alondra in a more adult fashion now that she's 11 and a half. We are treating her more as a preteen rather than a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And we no longer treat Gabriel like he's a baby. So similarly, we think it is normal for a child to stumble and make lots of mistakes. But if an adult consistently stumbles and makes lots of mistakes, we know that something is wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? So young Christians need fellowship that will protect them and encourage them to grow.
Definitely.
Older Christians, on the other hand, must have love and patience and not cause the young ones to stumble. And we talked about that ad nauseum last episode.
Yep.
So as the younger Christians mature, they can in turn help other believers to grow. And that's why discipleship and small groups are important.
Yeah, if you're a new hoper, we have lots of groups. In fact, a lot of them are like about to get started. Like right now is an amazing time to join a small group. I don't know how you structure things at PH, but
we have the same thing. We have small groups.
Yep, and we have like Gateway and Pathway, like our discipleship journey classes, where you're together with other people and you're learning and growing. It's just very important things for us to grow. And you brought up, we say it a lot at New Hope. We grow best when we're in community, and it's not like it does sound really good, but we didn't just invent it because it sounds good. Like it's a biblical principle. We were created and designed to grow and learn from one another, and that's why we grow best when we're in community. So
at PH too, we say we enrich our relationship with one another and with our Lord Jesus. So,
yours sounds fancier than ours because you're smarter than I am. But no, whether you need to get signed up for Gateway at New Hope or get into a small group, or same thing at PH, and the Grow podcast, which I already plugged, the show with no name, which you're currently listening to, all great ways to continue to grow and be growing from other people as well. Because
that's right.
We definitely learn from each other. Yep.
We need one another.
Fourth reason? Wait, real quick. Speaking of community, make sure you jump in the comments this week. Let's get back to
this is also a community.
Let's get back to the 10, 15 different people commenting every week, and even more, because I know there's more of you than that listen every week. Jump in the comments. Like Leo just said, this is a community. This has been a really, really cool community as we've been going through this study on the book of Romans. So jump in the comments, especially later when we go through our questions that Pastor Leo will have. Answer some of those in the comments, reply to each other, all that stuff. It's really important. All right, we got one left. Fourth reason.
Left. All right, verses 22 to 23. We must not force our opinions on others.
I disagree. And here's why.
And you need to agree with me, or else you're banished. Okay, so we must not force our opinions on others.
Real quick, how fun would it be to banish somebody, though? Like, not kick them out. Like, we've all, hey, you're out of here. But, banish them. Right. It's so medieval. It sounds so fun.
You'll do it the Shakespeare way, too. You'll say the Shakespeare way.
My least favorite comment is going to get banished from the... No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Don't be hesitant to leave a comment.
That's right. All right, so we must not force our opinions on others. There are certain truths that all Christians must accept.
Right.
Those are the essentials we talked about. Yep. We must accept them because they are all a foundation of our faith. But this is a pet peeve of mine.
Oh boy,
we're
back to
it's
grunting and groaning, Leo.
It's a but. But other non-essential areas of disagreement should not be used as a test of fellowship.
Amen.
Seriously. So if it's not a foundational issue, do not try to force everybody to accept it. No Christian can borrow another Christian's convictions and be honest in his Christian life. You need to have it, deal with it with Jesus alone. It's you and Jesus. You talk about it with the Holy Spirit. Now, our conscience, and here's the bottom line of everything that we talked about today. Our conscience is strengthened by knowledge, but knowledge must be balanced by love, or else it will tear down instead of build up.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's no unclean food will not make a young Christian grow. But when this truth is lovingly taught to him or to her, then he or she can grow and develop a stronger conscience. See, we may hold different convictions about many matters, but we must hold them in love.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's good.
So just stop the fighting. Can we all just get along?
You know what, Leo? I feel like you're fighting with me about how we're fighting too much, and you're causing me to stumble because of it.
I am triggered.
I guess this one would be an essential, though. So, yeah. Well, that's very good, Leo. You got some questions for us before we wrap up?
All right, here are your questions. Number 1. In what ways can we consciously or unconsciously put stumbling blocks in front of other Christians? Number 2, how would you describe what it means to promote peace among Christians? Not just groups and denominations, all Christians. And number 3, what would it take for you to be known as someone who builds others up?
It would be a pretty good thing to be known as. And jump in the comments right now on YouTube. And answer one or multiple of those. Come back, respond to somebody else's. Let's be in that community that we were talking about.
I will henceforth be known as Leo the Master Builder.
I don't like that
no?
at all. It's better than some of the other claims you've made on the podcast. But and then next step, we're starting the penultimate chapter of Romans 15. We're going to be in verses 1 through 13. So read Romans 15, 1 through 13 this week. And then while you're doing that, and while you're thinking about what Pastor Leo's taught us today and those questions that he gave us, that you can always find those, by the way, in the YouTube video description or in the podcast notes, depending on where you listen/watch. But as you're going through all of that, think about that thing Leo said where, knowledge is great, and our conscience can be strengthened by knowledge, is what you said, but it has to be balanced by love. Otherwise, what's the point? And we talk about it on both of our podcasts a lot, here and on the Grow podcast, where knowledge is great, but if it doesn't impact how we're living our lives in any way, it's useless.
It is.
And that's you go back to if you have all these different things but don't have love, what's the point? And so let's put the things we're learning into practice, especially since they're Leo's pet peeves, and he's going to get really angry if you don't do them. He'll make that sound, and you haven't had to hear it in person yet. Like, it's jarring, I promise. But but just as we continue to learn how to love each other better and therefore follow Jesus better, let's make sure we're putting those things into practice, not just learning, like, okay, now I know how to do it. And then my first opportunity, I completely forget that, and I just deal with things how I've always dealt with them because it's easier and more comfortable.
Yep.
Let's be intentional about changing how we are living our lives around our other Christians, changing how we perceive other people on these non-essential issues. Let's be intentional about that this week.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Pastor Leo. It was very good.
You're welcome.
Thank you to all of you, New Hope family. We love you guys so much. We're hoping you're having such a great start to 2024, the year that apparently exists, even though it sounds impossible, because I was born in 1987, and it is somehow 2024, and in my brain it's still like 1996, and I'm going to go home and watch Recess now and Batman and Superman, but that is not how life works. So hope you're having a great start to the year. Thank you for being with us. We love you, and we will see you next time.
Yeah.